Isn't it weird how technology gets better and better as time goes on, and it seems like computers get faster and graphics processing gets better and there's more memory on every device, and yet you can still be trying to access your email or work with an Excel spreadsheet and wind up having your computer jam up or something like that. And it just kind of makes you think about how, as we get more ability to do things, it doesn't always translate to a better experience for the end user. Because quite often what happens is sloppiness enters the room, and as people get to have more resources, they waste more resources as well. For example, when you had to take software and put it onto 1.4 megabyte floppy disks, while every single piece of data mattered, there was only a limited amount of storage space, and so there was a lot of thought put into trying to make sure that there was efficiency in the code. But when we live in a time where you can easily download gigabytes of information in just a few minutes, or even sometimes maybe seconds, it starts to be easy and even appealing to not worry so much about efficiency and start churning out sloppy work. So we see that happen across the board in a lot of different applications, not necessarily just software. It could also be in the way we interact and engage with content in general. We have much more access to content, and so we start to just be deluged with garbage. I think about the times back when the internet was not usually high speed. It was maybe on a 56K modem or something like that. Websites didn't load super quick. And so you'd have advertisements, but they were just little banner images that would load at the bottom or at the top of a web page. Now you go to a website, like a news page maybe, and you see banner ads on both sides, and you have ads on the top, and you have multiple video ads playing, and you have pop-up ads that are playing, and you have to close a few probably pop-up windows or something just to be able to view the content on the website. So there's lower quality in terms of the experience, despite the fact that the platforms have evolved to where you'd think that you'd have a better experience. And, you know, for example, I was thinking about that as I was playing this game that you see on the screen, Farthest Frontier, which is a great game. In any case, I was thinking about how there's a limitation in the game. Like, you can only you can zoom in and out in the game, which is perfect, but you can't change the camera angle. And I've always liked it when you can, you know, zoom in and change the angle, and, you know, maybe have more of a first person perspective in a city building game. And somebody had responded to the question of whether you can change the camera angle in this game on the Reddit for it, and others had said, well, no, you can't do that because system resources would be taxed if you didn't have a fixed perspective for the camera. And I was thinking, that's interesting to hear someone say it would consume too much computer resources to give the game a free camera, when there's all sorts of games which are more complex than this particular game, where you can totally change your camera angle. And what it really is not that it can't be done, it's that it's probably a indie studio and they have limited resources in terms of people and time and things like that, and so some features just don't get added in. And in this particular case, one of those features that's not in the game is LODs, level of details, which is just that you have to have basically multiple different models for the same assets. So as you zoom out and you view things that are more far away, the game renders the things that are farther away in less detail. And that's kind of something that's a basic part of games like this, which, you know, takes a little bit more work to do it. But in the age of miracles, sometimes we say things can't be done, and it's not because they couldn't be done. It's because somebody just didn't really want to do it, and so people get lazy and they say, well, it can't be done. And it's really not, because you can look around and you can see other examples where it actually was done by other studios or other teams. And you know, you see that in life, in the workplace, in a lot of situations where somebody will have an excuse and say, well, it's not possible. But really it is. It's not impossible. It's that you're not willing to do what it takes to actually make that particular thing happen. Because if it really matters to you, you find a way. And that goes back to, you know, how much do we invest ourselves into one thing instead of trying to churn out something and then jump to the next thing as quickly as possible? That's a big part of why we tend to be dissatisfied with life sometimes, because we don't make the most of something and see it to its fullest level of completion. We dabble, we try to get to a place where it's good enough, and then we jump ship looking for whatever the next thing is. More detail, more commitment, fewer projects, but a higher level of commitment to the things that we do winds up being a better way to look at life. And in a time of lots and lots of stuff, but not necessarily as much quality, sometimes it's important to just take a moment and remember consuming less is sometimes the best way to feel more enriched. Anyways, I thought I also wanted to talk today about the importance of showing care and concern and grace and kindness when you're engaging with others. Yesterday, I was at work, and as I've said before, we're going through a training phase where I'm not really doing my job yet. I'm just job shadowing and learning. But really, I'm not doing anything. Maybe I'm going through the motions, but really I'm just paired with somebody else who's doing their job and they're training me. And to some degree, I will help that person do their job, but it's all about learning. That's really the purpose of why I'm working the shift I'm doing, paired up with the person I'm paired up with. And going through this particular part of the training experience, it can be frustrating. It's frustrating for me because sometimes I feel like I'm just not really understanding what I need to understand. And it can be frustrating for the other person because they have a job to do. And now part of their job is to take someone they don't know and train that person to do the job. And, you know, I've done some classroom training, so I understand a lot of the basics, but not enough to really be particularly useful to that individual. So I don't like it that I feel like I'm potentially a distraction and a burden to the other person there who's trying to divide their attention between doing their work and training a new guy. I don't like having to inconvenience our clients, like a person who calls in asking for guidance or help, and I pick up the phone and I talk to this person and I try my best to help them and walk through the things that they're dealing with, but I don't necessarily know how to help them. I may have to put them on hold and then try to figure it out, or put them on hold and then loop in someone else who knows what they're doing to get the guidance I need to be able to help the person who called in. And those are things which are not comfortable for anybody. But going through a learning experience is also necessary, because you can't grow if you don't put yourself in that position of vulnerability. But what I've thought about while I go through this is how important grace is in this process. And by that I mean, case in point, there's a moment yesterday when I'm starting to feel a little bit frustrated. Frustrated because maybe I'm a little frustrated at myself. Maybe I'm a little bit frustrated because I don't feel like I'm quite getting, the help I need to figure out something in that moment. And it's just a little bit of that kind of, you start feeling vaguely overwhelmed, and then you start to get a little bit frustrated. And I became aware of that, and then I sort of checked myself and made a deliberate point to smile and be positive in that moment. Not that I was really overcome with a terrible attitude or anything like that, but I just realized I need to make a conscious decision to show grace in this moment, even if I'm not really feeling it on an emotional level. And I think that that's an important thing to be able to do. To be able to say, you know what, I don't necessarily exactly know how to solve this particular problem I'm facing, but we're going to figure it out, and I'm going to have a good attitude through that. I can't necessarily control the outcome, but I can control my attitude. And there was also a moment when, because I'm pretty good at reading people, I could tell that the guy I was working with started to feel a little bit flustered himself. He wasn't rude by any measure, but there's a lot going on, a lot of requests coming in, things that are stuff he's trying to deal with. And he was trying to navigate those things and trying to give me the attention I needed. And I could tell he was feeling a little bit frustrated. And then I also noticed a moment when he kind of did the same thing. Kind of paused and adjusted his attitude and made a conscious effort to make sure he was being a gracious host. And we worked through that. And we had a good day, I think. But it really doesn't matter what side of the table you're on, whether you're the teacher getting frustrated with the student, or you're the student getting frustrated with the teacher, or yourself maybe. The real mark of professionalism is being able and willing to be gracious in those moments which are a little bit trying. And to say, you know what, we've got this, we're going to figure it out. To exude the attitude of service, even when you don't necessarily know how to serve, even when you're not 100% sure how to create the right outcome, you still can give off the message that you are going to make sure that it all works out in the end. No matter what you have to do, even if it takes longer than you want it to, even if you have to circle back, even if you have to loop in more people, whatever you're going to do, you're going to see it through. And you can't necessarily assure other people that you're going to be able to do everything that you want to do on your own. But you can give people assurance that you're committed to making sure that you aren't going to walk away until they are set up for success. When you have that attitude of service, a willingness to help, it just goes a really long ways. And it comes back to that whole thing that attitude matters a lot more than qualification. You can know how to do something very well, and you can have a bad attitude about it, and that makes you pretty much not a very good steward, right? Or you can be a person who is maybe not the best at everything, but you always have a good attitude about everything you have to approach in life. And if that's who you are, then you know, you don't have to be the best to do good things with the time and the life you have. To shift gears a little bit, I got a couple letters in the mail, and I don't normally get a lot of mail, which is nice, but I checked my mail and I got 2 letters. One of them from Arvest Bank and one of them from the Montana Department of Revenue. And the Montana Department of Revenue reached out because they were missing returns from some of my previous tax years. And, you know, that's a little bit frustrating to me because I don't even really know where to begin for some of that stuff. I had paperwork on file for the last 3 years, but then when you go further back, I kind of just don't have it. So, you know, if we're talking about something further back, I don't know. Like, I'm pretty sure I paid them, but I can't necessarily prove it. And I don't remember exactly, you know, what happened. In any case, you know, I emailed somebody and kind of went back and forth with them. And then I called directly this afternoon, and I got a hold of somebody who was really understanding and patient and took time to kind of be consoling and friendly about the whole thing, and, you know, gave me the assurance that she's going to look into it and figure it out, and really just, you know, help me get to the point where if I owe them something from like some kind of back taxes or something, that we figure out exactly what it is and, you know, get me a number so I know what I owe them and I can pay them and whatever. I'm not really worried about that. You know, it's just, you know, like the concerning part there is like if you get a letter and they say, well, you know, you may owe something. Well, I don't even know what that number is. So if they don't know, I don't know. And I truly don't know whether it's a thing where like I filed and they misplaced the return, or if I somehow, you know, failed to file for one of those years in the past. But either way, like even if I owe somebody, I'm going to need some help to figure out like how much do I owe them, right? Like I don't know how to figure it out retroactively. So it would have to be like estimated or something. Anyways, whatever it is, it's not a particularly large amount of money. It's just one of those things that's a little bit disconcerting, and it's especially hard when all you have to go off of is a form letter that came in the mail. But when you get a real person on the other end and you can actually send them an email and you can pick up the phone and call them and have a real genuine conversation, and you have that assurance that they're going to help you figure it out, well, then suddenly it doesn't seem like that big of a deal anymore. Suddenly it takes the friction out of the experience. And then, you know, I'm not worried about it because I know that someone is there to actually put a human element into it, so it's not just this impersonal kind of daunting thing that you don't know how to deal with. So as a segue here, I would just say it's important to have personal communication skills. We've talked a lot about AI and how AI is gonna displace people. And that may be true. But one thing that AI is not able to do is really give a human level of commitment to sensitive things. If you go to the doctor, it doesn't matter how many AI tools there are out there. It doesn't matter how much automation exists. You aren't going to want a chat bot to give you a medical diagnosis. You're going to want a real person there who you can talk to about things and get a straight answer. Someone who's going to help you navigate challenging moments in your life. Someone's who's going to have bedside manner. Someone who can have a level of sensitivity and care. These are things that matter. And so as we approach the changing world around us, and we see so many things where the messaging is AI is going to replace our jobs and automation is going to replace our ways of working, it's extremely important that we show care and invest in people with a level of communication that is going to build trust. That's a skill that AI is not readily going to replace. Yes, you can create a chat bot that could pretend to care about a person, but that's all it can do. It can pretend to do something that resembles human empathy because that's what it was programmed to do. It can't actually have human empathy. Today we have a lot of people who hide behind their cell phone screens, hide behind their safe refuges of social media, and avoid the things that are hard, namely social interactions and things that might involve some level of friction. We need friction. We need to be able to show that we care about people by actually engaging with people. And if we can't do that, then a lot of the things that maybe you do in life, they can be automated. But the stuff that really matters the most is the human element, which can't be really automated. So it's something to work on. Learning how to connect with others in a direct and empathetic way. Communication skills are probably some of the most important things to develop for the purposes of staying relevant in the workplace and continuing to be able to serve in an ever evolving world. It's kind of like how in gaming, I could point out so many different games that are really beautiful or really good in terms of design, but the ones that really matter the most are not the ones that are designed in the most polished way visually. They're the ones that tell a story and really form an emotional bond between the player and the product. Like, for example, Skyrim or Elder Scrolls or other franchises which are beloved. It's not that the game was designed so very well. Maybe it was, probably was designed very well. But what was really the very best thing about it was not the visual appearance. It was the love put into it by the community, by the developers. The stickiness comes from making people feel like the experience they're having is a truly valuable one. And that's something that goes deeper than just the appearance of something that is good. There's a lot of things that look good, but when you actually dive deeper into them, they kind of feel a little bit empty, a little bit samey. in the professional world, there's a lot of people who are out there with good looking resumes. But if you stack them all up and put them next to each other, it's kind of hard to tell a difference between people, because they all have similar looking resumes. They all have similar qualifications. So how do you take multiple people who are good at what they do and pick the one that's the best? Well, it's going to come down to things like, what is their why? What is their purpose? Do they show empathy? Do they show care? Are they people who lead from a place of love and grace and empathy? And do they have the ability to connect with others in a way that is transformative? Those are the things that really matter. So the other letter I got came from Arvest Bank, and I thought that was interesting because when I came into town, came from Montana and came to Arkansas, I thought, well, I will go open a bank account with Arvest Bank. And that should be kind of cool, because Arvest Bank is a major bank in Arkansas. And I thought, why not open an account? So I go down there, I open an account with this bank. And I said, well, what do I need to do to open the account? They said, doesn't matter how much money you put in, $50 is fine to open an account. So I said, okay, cool. Put $50 in, open the account, and then about a week later, I get a letter in the mail saying, we're closing your account. We don't want to do business with you. So I said, okay. Go into the branch, talk to the people. And they say, oh, well, it looks like somebody did a typo, and instead of putting AR as the state abbreviation, they put AK. And so your address couldn't be verified, and so it was flagged as potential fraud because your ID was from Montana and you're opening an account in Arkansas, and the address we put down for Arkansas actually was, I don't know, Alaska or something, because somebody put the state abbreviation in wrong. So it's like, okay. So they open a ticket, they fix it up, they're like, okay, life is good again. Your account is active. Don't worry about it. So that's great. I thought, okay, people make mistakes, no worry. And then I forgot about it again. And then now, about like a month later, guess what? I get another letter in the mail saying your account is being closed. So I'm like, oh, great. So I go into the bank today, walk up to the counter, and some lady says, oh, well, your account is probably being closed because of inactivity. You didn't do any transactions, and so it was flagged as a high-risk account, and so it's being closed. So I was like, okay, well, so if you close my account because I didn't do any transactions in the last month, then how much money do I need to put in so that it's above that threshold so I don't have to worry about this happening? And she's like, well, I don't know. I don't think there is any amount. I think like it'll just always happen. But then she said, but I can't do anything. I can't fix it. You're going to have to call the number on the letter and talk to those people. So I was like, well, all right. So I go outside on the sidewalk and I call a number, get some guy, and he's like, well, I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with the account, but I guess it probably just, maybe it's just that you didn't use it very much, like they said. So anyways, he says, I can't do anything for you. So you're going to have to go back into the branch, and then one of the bankers is going to have to open a ticket or something to get this fixed. Because I was like, well, I guess I'll just go buy a coffee once a month. Is that what I need to do to keep this account active? But anyways, and then the guy just hung up on me. So I was like, well, that was kind of not really helpful. So I went back into the bank, and I'm like, well, I called the number, and customer service said I need to go back in the branch again. And the guy I was talking to second time in the branch, he's like, well, I don't know why we'd close an account because there's inactivity, because normally we don't do that. I'm like, well, all right. So see what you can figure out, I guess. But you know what's on my mind as I go through all this? What's on my mind is this is not my primary bank account. Really, the only reason why I opened the account at all was because I thought I might want to kind of establish a local banking relationship if I wanted to open like a home loan or something down the road. And I thought it would be cool. But now it's not feeling very cool. And I have like $50 in that bank account, so I don't really care, you know? Like it's at the point where these folks have threatened to close my bank account twice in 2 months. And that whole, you walk into the bank and they can't answer your questions, and they don't know like why they're gonna close your account, and then you call them on the phone and those people don't really seem to know, and they send you back into the branch, and it just starts to be messy. Makes you as a customer just want to say, well, you know what, if this is not my primary bank right now, the only thing at risk is my $50 that I put in there and my time. But if this is the way they do business, then maybe I should just keep my primary banking with Wells Fargo, which has treated me just fine for 20 years or something. And yeah, just not worry about it. I'll just not be a customer of Arvest Bank. Or if I am, I don't know how much money I want to put into that account. Like maybe they'll figure it out. But now my whole attitude toward this situation has soured. It no longer feels like it's cool to be their customer anymore. And that's just a great example of how the type of way you treat people makes a very significant difference in terms of retention, whether you're trying to retain employees or retain customers. A little bit of being indifferent to people, or kind of saying it's not my issue, I'm not going to worry about it. Well, if you don't act like you care, then people are going to look for someone who will care. And it's not about a level of competence. It's not about somebody being able to work miracles. It's about showing that you care, showing that the customer matters, and giving off the vibe that you're going to see it through. You're going to make sure it all works out, and you're not going to just leave somebody hanging. And that's all about attitude. So all of it comes down to, the story about the bank, the story about, people at the Montana Department of Revenue, story about, how we design products and services, story about, my training days at the transportation office. It all comes down to do what you do with a sense of love, care, stewardship, and do it with a solid understanding that you are a steward of something greater than yourself. Because if you truly care about the subject material, then you're going to be doing the best you can every day. Not just to be your best, but to deliver the best experience for others. If that means you have to loop other people in, then you will. If that means that you have to sacrifice a little bit of your comfort zone to improve someone else's experience, you will. And you're going to care about the small details. Details that you don't necessarily have to focus on. You will put those details in. You'll put the effort in, not because you have to, but because you care. And that is the key to success in the world. Caring about other people and always trying to put yourself in the shoes of others to say, how do they feel? And how does what I'm doing make other people feel? And understand that everybody's different. You have to learn how to read the room, because what works for one person isn't going to work for somebody else. You have to speak the language that other people speak so that they know that you get them. And that's something probably AI isn't going to be able to do. But real people can do that if they care and they have the right attitude and they have the right spirit and the right motives. So try to be the right kind of a person, whether you're at work or in your social life, personally, in your home life, wherever you might find yourself. Always try to be a person who cares deeply about others. And if you do that, well, you'll probably be the right kind of a person, and you'll probably wind up being relevant in some way, no matter where you find yourself in our ever-changing world. As always, on your adventure, best luck. As always, thanks so much.